What is up, collectors? Welcome back to another episode. About 4 months ago, I made a video about some just real epic grading fails, and I thought, yeah, I'll probably leave it at that. But in the ensuing months, I've just come across some more and more egregious errors in this grading space that we're in. So I find it, troubling, entertaining, disturbing, eye-opening, whatever you want to call it. And you guys can make your own determinations about what you guys think of it. But I thought, let's go over a couple more of those, um, a couple more pretty eye-opening uh, errors from these companies. And so we're going to dive into what I call Never Trust a Slab, part two. Part two. Um, I want to go over some kind of head scratchers. You guys can tell me what you think. And I'd love to hear some of your experiences in the comments as well. Now, one of the types of cards that I collect a lot of are Topps Venezuelan cards. These are a rare subset of Topps cards that were issued in Venezuela starting in 1959, mostly alternating years, but not every year, up through 68. And a lot of these cards, admittedly, are similar in a lot of ways to the US Topps that were issued. But in many ways, each year has some pretty distinctive uh, characteristics or features that set them apart. And some are pretty obviously distinctive, which we'll see here. And so if you do a little bit of homework and research, it's not too hard to determine whether this card would represent a US issued card or a Topps Venezuela card. Some years are a little bit more tricky, but for the most part, if you take the time to do the research, it's pretty clear cut and pretty easy. So, but if you don't know what you're looking at and you don't take the time, then yeah, sure, you can make those mistakes. And so it's gotten more and more common for me, you know, seeing these grading companies go through trying to grade these cards and making just pretty egregious errors. And I think as we go through, as these companies continue to grade more and more cards, we're going to continue to see those errors increase, particularly because they're grading more than ever, they're hiring more than ever, and a lot of these people they're hiring on have less experience than ever, and they're not willing to take the time to do the proper R&I, research and identification. These are just some of the numbers from September this past month. And you can see PSA in the month of September graded 714,000 cards. Poor lowly SGC, lowest number they've had in a month, 56,000, slowly dying, which is sad because they were a real king of vintage, but I fear that much of their grading capabilities and experienced graders have now been shifted away, and they're slowly being kind of rendered insignificant by design when collectors bought them out. So you can see just in general the numbers, PSA leading the pack. And even this was, a couple days ago, but in October, they graded out 78,000 cards in a single day. It's just mind-boggling. So you can imagine with all these cards coming through every single day, there's going to be mistakes. But you can also kind of get a sense that the emphasis is very much turn and burn. We're printing cash here. We need to do this as quickly as possible. Time is money. And so for that reason, that's where, as collectors, we're paying good money for this, that we deserve for them to get it right. So we're going to go over a couple of examples here. So let's just look at just some bad grading where you just don't get the grade right. I know sometimes there's some subtle, you thought your card was a 5 and you got a 3 or a 4. look perfect to you, but these are some pretty egregious errors. So this is an image that a collector posted. It said, is this the worst PSA 2 ever graded? This is a 1952 Topps Willie Mays, very iconic card. You can see the front of it looks like it was run over by a dump truck, scratches throughout the whole card. This is clearly not a 2. And the person who posted this actually tagged Nat Turner about this and says, please do something to correct this obvious error. So it looks like a legitimate slab. Looks like it doesn't look like the number was doctored. But when you actually look up the certification on this card, it actually comes back as a 1. So what I don't know is, did PSA like change the grade? Well, I don't know why a collector would take a 2 and then crack it and resub it. When you have a 2, you're just crushing the value of your card. Why would you do that? So I'm a little bit, I don't know if you guys have any ideas about what might have happened here as to how it went from a 2 to a 1. Did PSA correct it digitally? Did they request deactivate the certain request the person send it back to them? How did they get a hold of this person? I don't know. I just found that interesting. So I guess in their defense, they did correct the error, and maybe this was a reholder or something from an old label. I have no idea, but clearly not a 2, right? But corrected. Here's a couple others. Here's a 1909 T206 Herman Armbruster. You can see just the whole right upper part of the card, missing portions of card and creased all the way through. This one got a 2. This one has an old label though. And then our guy Reggie, 1969 Topps rookie card with some paper ad on top and some kind of dirt and kind of junk on the bottom of the card. And this one got a 2. So I don't know, guys. Usually it's the other way where we're overly harsh. The one on the left is an old slab, so maybe that just was less harsh grading standards. But again, we at least got to get the grade right. Now let's move on to a little bit of incorrect encapsulation, and this more kind of harkens back to what I was saying earlier about Topps Venezuela cards. So I'm going to go over some examples of additional Topps Venezuela cards that these companies continue to make mistakes, continue to make these errors. And so let's take a look. So this is a submitter who submitted a 1962, actually what is a US Topps Roger Maris, and it's by the same, I'm assuming it's by the same submitter because of the serial numbers on both cards, that was in the same submission. But one of the things you'll see from their submission is all in 1962 Topps Venezuela, all of the writing on the back was in Spanish, which you can see I've included one on the right here. It's all in Spanish. Well, you clearly see on the front of this, it's all in English. So it's not a Venezuelan card. And then you can see even the coloring of the stat box is more of like, I don't know, a different shade of like brown or reddish brown almost for the Venezuela, including for the player image on the back. And then a muted tone for the card on the front. But clearly, if it's in Spanish versus English, this should be a no-brainer to get it right. And I think ultimately people in the community pointed this out, and PSA corrected the flip on one, I think deactivated the other. So again, in their defense, when these are caught, they're making some efforts to correct it. But I guess my argument is I'm not really sure how we ended up in that boat in the first place, given these obvious differences between the 62 US Topps and the 62 Venezuela, which you can see over here on the right side. Well, here's another one from the 62 set. There's a series of cards about Babe Ruth in the 62 Topps set and the 62 Venezuela set as well. This is the card of what they call Babe is a Boy, card number 135, and on top is the US. The US Topps, which was actually mislabeled as Venezuelan Topps, you can see on the slab. But looking on the back of the card, you can see, again, all in English. The bottom is an example of what a true 62 Topps Venezuela Baby's a Boy card looks like. Much kind of richer, kind of orangish color on the back. And guess what, guys? It's all in Spanish. So this should not, no US and no USA trademark as well. So this should not be a hard one to differentiate, you wouldn't think. But again, this was a major error. And on top of that, look at the grade, a 5. So a 5 in a Venezuela card is incredibly rare. So this would be a card that would go for big bucks. This would probably be a comma card if it were truly a Venezuela card. And so that's why encapsulating these cards is just so dangerous, because there's a lot of collectors who may not know what they're doing and pay big bucks for this card and be out a lot of money. So what about if the opposite happens? What about if you have a Venezuela card and you send it in labeled as a Venezuela and they encapsulate it as a Topps? So this collector said, after a near devastating labeling mishap, Sandy is on his way home from SGC. I hate being a squeaky wheel as a customer, but this one had me seeing red from the moment the grade popped and I saw the misidentification. So this was a collector who had a very rare card, a 1959 Topps Venezuela Sandy Koufax card. The population on this card is probably less than 30, maybe less than 20. And in this high of a grade, it's very rare, maybe a handful of 3s and higher. And the 59 Koufax is a really, the 59 Venezuelan Koufax is a really tough card to differentiate. It does look a lot like the 59 US Topps, and it also has a US trademark on the back. Interestingly, in 59, some had Venezuelan trademarks, some had US trademarks. But one of the telltale signs is the muted kind of color on the front. You're lacking any of the gloss, and it almost has like a very kind of like yellowish, orangish look to his image and kind of a grainy look to it. And on the back, which I didn't include it, it has like a sandstone kind of appearance where it's got valleys, peaks and valleys and ridges. So there are, if you are a seasoned collector, you can differentiate the two. It is hard, but this collector sent it in as a Venezuelan, which it was, and it got misencapsulated. And just to give you an idea, an SGC 3 may go for, I don't know, 40, 50 bucks, and a Venezuelan SGC 3 may go for $3,000 to $4,000. So it's a big deal. You can see the correction. They did correct it, which is good. But again, as a collector, now you're sending it back through the mail. You're risking having to reinsure it. You're risking having it lost in the mail. A lot of things can go wrong. So again, something that did not need to happen. And again, this is SGC, and I'm not just bashing PSA. All grading companies seem to be struggling with this. Let's talk about another collector. This collector had a 1966 Topps Venezuela Yankees team card, and they sent it to SGC, and SGC, in this lower left image here, encapsulated it as a 1966 Topps, which it is not. So this collector said, had the same thing happen to me, was a Veni, but sent it back and corrected it, no charge. So this is another example of SGC misencapsulating a Venezuelan card, and you can see they corrected it over here on the right. You can see in the correct identification as a Topps Venezuelan, and you can see the back of the 66s is in almost like a rich orange color. So it's fairly distinctive from the US Topps in 66, which is kind of a lighter colors, and it lacks any of the gloss that the US Topps have. So 66 is the big difference, is the back has more of an orangish, really orangish color to it. Oftentimes it's the backs of these cards are almost miscut. They're like falling off the card, but there's clear telltale features of these cards in 66. Here's another 66, and this is a batting leaders card with 3 of the best players to ever play the game: Roberto Clemente, Hank Aaron, and Willie Mays. PSA called this card a 1966 Topps Venezuela, which it is not. This card on the left, it is a US Topps, and you can see the differences between a true Topps Venezuela on the right of this card with the muted toning of the front with no gloss versus this one on the left clearly has a glossy look. And then it's got a lighter back tone to the back of the card and an orangish tone in the correct one. So this is a big mistake. Again, in a PSA 5 for a Venezuelan card like this would be a common card. So if the seller did sell this, somebody would be out a lot of money. They bought a US Topps card. It's a big deal. Joe Morgan, they seem to have a lot of trouble with Joe Morgan Venezuelans versus US. This is a 66. These two cards on the left were both encapsulated as Topps Venezuela cards. Both are US Topps. Both have lighter backs, and you can see on the right as an example a Topps Venezuelan Joe Morgan card, just how different the backs are of these cards, and even the lack of gloss on the front as well. And again, this one's in a 4, and this one's in a PSA 4, this one's in a PSA 6. These are huge dollar cards if they were Venezuelans, and so if somebody buys those, they're out a lot of money. Here's a 59. Harvey Kuhn. It is misencapsulated as a Topps Venezuela, and guess what? Wow, in a 7. Somebody's going to pay big bucks for that card. 59. You can see the back of this card is clearly US Topps. It's just based upon it. It's cream versus a gray back, although there are some cream backs in 59. The cream cardstock of this is totally wrong. It's clearly a US paper stock. And so between the front gloss and the back and the US trademark and the paper stock, and that it's cream and not gray, which most of the 59s were gray, this is clearly a US Topps. This was misencapsulated. And you can see the Venezuelan next to it. This one in the 4 is a true Venezuelan. And this is the back of that 4, which is a gray back. And in this particular player, another telltale feature is his did have a Venezuelan trademark. You can see at the bottom here, Impreso in Venezuela. But this one is a US. So it's clearly not a Venezuelan card. So again, got it wrong. Another big card in the 64 set is the AL Bombers card with Maris, Cash, Mantle, and Al Kaline. This one in 64 is really, there's no excuse for this one. The US, so this is CGC, CGC, CSG, is it CSG, CGC? I thought it was CGC, whatever their initials are, who knows. The next greatest thing in grading. This one was encapsulated as a Topps Venezuela. The 64s, guys, had black backs in Venezuela. This one clearly has an orange back. This is, without question, a US Topps, graded as a Venezuelan. And in a 3, that's a huge card. And you can see the back of a true Venezuelan in this card is clearly has a black black on the back. So there's really no reason that it should be misencapsulated here. Well, what about auction houses, right, guys? Auction houses, you know, you got REA, you got Heritage, you got all the big auction houses. They have people whose job it is to catalog and critique and authenticate these cards. There's a lot riding on the reputation of these auction houses to get it right. We're trusting them. There's a lot of money at stake that's being exchanged hands. So whenever possible, they go above and beyond to make sure they get it right. Well, here's REA, one of the leaders in auction houses, right? Well, the card we just looked at, the AL Bombers card, Beckett, gave this one a 7.5. That is amazing. That'd be thousands and thousands of dollars, this card in a Venezuelan. Okay? Well, the only problem is, guys, it's not a Venezuelan. It's a US Topps. And this was a lot listed on REA that not only Beckett got it wrong, but REA reinforced it by listing it on their auction as a 7.5. That was a huge, huge mishap. And you can see the correct back on the right here. But that's something that even it seems like auction houses are just trusting the slab in this case, but they should have experts in all types of foreign issues and US issues to look over these cards, because that's a pretty big deal. Huge deal. Well, everybody, for those of us who were lucky enough to go to the National, any cards you could ever want at your fingertips, hundreds and hundreds of tables and dealers. Well, Topps Venezuela is a pretty rare set of subsets of cards, and it's pretty rare to find them in most shows. But the National, you're going to find some at the National. Let's take a look. Well, here's a dealer, and he's got a bunch. He has a bunch of Topps Venezuela cards, and big ones too, right? We got the 64 Topps Venezuela Hank Aaron. We got the 66 Topps Venezuela Mantle and 66 Topps Venezuela Joe Morgan. Fantastic, right? I mean, any collector's dream, except for the fact that they're all US Topps and they are incorrectly encapsulated. This is what the back of the 64 Aaron should look like. It should have a black back. Well, look at this one is orange. The Joe Morgan, we've looked at before. It's got a very dark orange back. And the same thing with the Mantle. The Mantle is going to have a similar coloration to the back, and you can see how light the backs of these cards are. So these are both US Topps, and these are both huge money cards given the grade. Any Mantle Venezuelan card is thousands of dollars. Same thing with the grade of this Hank Aaron. Let me see if I can't really zoom it, but this is going to be a comma card, and this Joe Morgan is going to be approaching a comma card. So and the Mantle's going to be a couple thousand if it were a Venezuelan. So poor collectors out more money. One of the dealers with specialization in Venezuelan cards did point it out to that dealer, and they said they were going to take them off and take them out of circulation, but who knows? I mean, this Joe Morgan alone is priced at $1,400. I can only imagine the Mantle and the Aaron, they're probably way more than that. So that's kind of all I had for today. But I think it's a useful exercise. I think if you do collect mainstream cards like US Topps, I think for the most part, majority of the time, you're probably okay, given how common they are. But if you are into niche cards and sets or variations, things like Gopichi, things like Milton Bradley, things like other foreign issues like Cuban cards, Topps Venezuelan cards, you really have to do your research as a collector to know what you're looking at. Do not trust the slab that they're in. When in doubt, reach out to other friends in the hobby who have specialization with those cards and get their opinions before spending top dollar on these cards, because what you don't want to do is be out hundreds or thousands of dollars for something that you're assuming is authentic, which it may be authentic. The problem is it may not be the correct subset, and you may be paying 5-10x for a US card when you think it's a Venezuelan or another type of so that is kind of the major stuff that I have for today, guys. I appreciate you watching. If you like this kind of content, I would love it if you liked and subscribed to my channel. I'm going to keep putting out good stuff, and I would love to hear what you guys think, what your experiences have been with these grading companies, and where you think we are at this point, given the lack of transparency and experience in a lot of these grading companies moving forward as collectors. What we're going to do? Are you going to continue to submit your cards, particularly your more rare and niche sets, or are you just going to hold on to them or wait till a better alternative comes along? I don't have a good answer for you right now. It's kind of dismal in this space. So would love to hear your thoughts. And again, thanks for watching, guys. Until the next time.